Laughing, hoping that I get signed. Now I own my own tracks, riding waves of the hype of mine. Popular and dirt poor broke, that ain't my type of grind.
All right, good brothers and sisters, this is MagMongoSlade, and we're going to be talking about AEW Dynamite from July the 6th, 2022. But first, we got to do two news and notes. One, Kenny Omega is discussing Jim Cornette again. Not a good idea. Not a good idea for old Kenny Omega. It's not a good idea, but he did it anyway. All right. So basically, the gist of it is that Kenny Omega says that the AEW locker room is now starting to be infected with fear over the cult of Cornette. He says, and I quote, "I think Jim Cornette has backed himself into a corner where now he's found this group of extremely pathetic human beings who have no other thing to aspire to, become, or no one to base their life off of, no one to listen to, no one to adhere to their commands. And so, when it became a character that he could play as though he was still traveling up and down the strip in the indies like back in the old days, now he's got this group of people hanging off of his every word, and all he has to do is sit and talk on a podcast with some other guy. When he realized he could make money by delivering hateful speech, he backed himself into a corner, and now, if he wants to make rent, if he wants to buy his fancy McDonald's double cheeseburger meal, he has to talk about the things that are going to get attention. And a lot of the time, that's going to be yours truly. That seeps into our locker room too. Yeah, it does. Everyone is so afraid of the fucking cult of Cornette army. And people that have anti-AEW sites that they want to be, they can do whatever the fuck they want to stay safe. Kenny Omega, look, he has been going back and forth with Jim Cornette for what, 10 years, I think, almost, nearly, some thereabouts. It's been about 10 years. He still thinks it's a gimmick. Something about Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks where they just don't accept that this is who Jim Cornette is. It's like, I get they may not be that familiar with him, but bruh, this is who Jim Cornette is. Jim Cornette has, when he gets, he's like a dog. When he gets a bone, he just gnarls on it forever. He's been gnarling on the Vince Russo bone for 20 years. 20 years of hatred of Vince Russo. Some of his very first shoot interviews are him hating Vince Russo. He's never going to get over this. It is not a gimmick. He is very serious. If you've crossed him, it's almost impossible to get out of that box. And doing stuff like this is only antagonizing the situation. You know, to be quite honest, I know that there's also people within AEW, as he talks about people being afraid of them, there's people who play into it. We know that FTR has went on his show before, and there were said to have been some heat on them for doing the podcast. They did the Jim Cornette Experience. Chris Statlander, she played on the recorder a version of what was this? Heaven is a Place on Earth, which is the song they use on AEW Botches. And it was the song that that has become sort of the anthem for AEW Botches, ROH Botches, the Kenny Olivier Twitter account, and all the different accounts that Kenny Omega is talking about. They all post AEW Botches, and they play Heaven is a Place on Earth or Heaven is a Wednesday Night. It's hilarious. And she played a version of it on a recorder. So she was playing along. It was fun. She didn't seem to be afraid or scared or anything like that. You know, it's just certain people, these folks have gained enemies over the years. You know, they have rubbed wrestling fans the wrong way. Just like, you know, some people are ridiculous, over the top, love them. There's going to be people who are ridiculous, over the top, hate them, or dislike them, or who just like messing with them. And I don't see it as being that huge of a negative, nor do I think Jim Cornette has created this issue. I think there was a lot of people who didn't like the Young Bucks before they even knew Jim Cornette, didn't like them. Hell, I'm one of those people. I've seen the Young Bucks. I remember when they was in TNA. Long before, I haven't even heard Jim Cornette had a podcast. I didn't like the Young Bucks then, when they were Generation Me. I didn't like them then. You know, Kenny Omega, I just thought he was overrated. I didn't hate him. And I still don't hate him. You know, I can sit and watch a Kenny Omega match. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But to think that he's not super sensitive over this subject, because kind of like how Meltzer has really been pushing them very, very hard and overrating all of their matches, giving them 5 stars just for breathing near a wrestling ring. Cornette has attempted to undercut everything that they've ever done. Even the stuff that they did that was good or somewhat good, Cornette will kind of shit on anyway, just kind of on principle, you know? But this whole thing about, you know, it's all a gimmick and everything. No, it's not a gimmick. It's not a gimmick at all, sir. Jim Cornette is serious about this, and he's a multimillionaire. You know, he doesn't really need to do the podcast to make money. He could talk about old wrestling really and make a lot of money, because there's still people who enjoy listening to his history stuff. There is more people who push him into doing recent material because there's so much to talk about. Now, there was a time when Jim Cornette would not watch modern wrestling. He's been doing that for a long time. He wouldn't watch modern wrestling. There was clips that you could see of him. He was talking about WCW, how he didn't watch it. And this was from the 90s or something like that. There was clips on, I think, John Arezzi's channel, I think, where he talks negatively about WCW and how he doesn't watch it and how he hates it. And, you know, he hates what it did to Jim Crockett Promotions and all this kind of stuff. He didn't watch WCW. He hated it. You know, he hated ECW back then. You know, he thought TNA had an opportunity because it was a Southern wrestling promotion that was partnered up with the NWA and trying to respect the traditions of the NWA and all that kind of stuff. But then when he saw the kind of people that were involved, basically Vince Russo, he didn't want to be involved with that either. Jim Cornette has hated modern wrestling for 30 years. Since at least 1990 that I can think of. He probably hated those Raws that he was on. I know he hit a lot of the TNA that he was on. Now, I know a lot of these guys, the Kevin Owens, the Sami Zayns, the Kenny Omegas, the Young Bucks, a lot of these guys, their heat with Cornette does not go back that far. It goes back to when they was working in Ring of Honor. And they didn't like that what he was doing when he was booking and running Ring of Honor. So, in that respect, it is personal, but it's not personal in so much as, you know, he's creating this brigade against them. It's just that there's mutual heat back and forth. And it seemed like both sides for a while are trying to pretend that there was no heat. And now since AEW is a thing and everybody's successful, everybody's benefiting from it, Cornette's benefiting from it because as he roasts the show, people are listening to his show. But there's also more people watching the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega than ever before. Therefore, you know, everybody's benefiting from AEW existing. And now his voice is getting louder and louder, especially as, you know, sometimes when he's right, when Jim Cornette is right and the show sucks and the ratings go down, more people are listening to his show to hear like, man, Jim Cornette was right. This sucks. This isn't working. You know, look at the ratings. It's going down. But when things are going well, people are like, oh, Jim Cornette was wrong. He said they couldn't sell out this building. They did. He said they couldn't do this. They did. And what you typically have is wrestling journalists on both sides, really, because now I just now realized that what the Big Nasty, what's the hell his name? Alfred Konuwa. He's anti AEW, and he's like one of the few wrestling journalists that I've seen that is legitimately, seemingly anti AEW. Not that he just doesn't like the product, but he seemingly doesn't like the company at all. You know, like he just seems to not like it. And he's one of the few people I've seen that's a wrestling journalist of any repute that feels that way. Now, some people have their little cheap shots here and there about AEW, but generally they're on AEW's side, especially the Meltzers and the Alvarezes who overrate every fucking match. So it's still, the internet still heavily leans more towards pro AEW than anti AEW. It seems silly to me that we're going to go to the everyone's afraid of Dakota Cornette. It's like, not really. I know it's probably embarrassing to see yourself on the ROH botches, AEW botches account falling all over the place. Or it's a lot of pressure to sit back and know that there's somebody watching the show who is going to clip something and post it online. You falling all over the place. Your referees being stupid. Especially your horse face referee fucking up, the Bojack referee. I get it. But WWE's been doing this for 30 years, man, and people have been doing that shit all the time. If they went out of their way to knock down everybody who talks shit about them, they'd be at war with the wrestling internet all the time. They mostly ignore the wrestling internet. Mostly. Sometimes you'll get that guy from Botchamania will get his accounts taken down every once in a while. But they're not at permanent war with, the internet like AEW is. Like AEW is consistently, getting copyright strikes on the AEW Botches account, on the different other accounts that float around the internet, on different other YouTube channels that float around the internet. They know what they're doing, and I don't see it as being everybody's afraid of them. I think that certain people are concerned that they're going to end up on these AEW Botches accounts and being laughed at, but that's just the cost of being on TV. When you're on TV, 9 times out of 10 people are going to make fun of you. It's okay. It's not a perfect TV show. People would make fun of Law & Order SVU if it was live on TV every week too, because I'll guarantee you, Mariska Hargitay probably had 100 takes to get her shit together. You only got one. So if you fuck up, too bad. You're just going to have to take the L. Just like if, John Cena forgets his lines or Roman Reigns forgets what he's doing, he's got to take the L. These guys, these independent wrestlers from AEW, these young guys that they're picking up, these rejects from WWE that they're picking up, they got to get thicker skin. All right? You can't just be like, oh, they're picking on us. It's like, what? Raw is voted the worst wrestling show every fucking year for the last 15 years or some shit by the Wrestling Observer. When was the last time Raw was voted as the best wrestling show? Even though it's more higher rated than every other wrestling show in the world. Outside of maybe SmackDown now. It's always voted to be the worst. SmackDown is almost always at the one near the top as one of the worst wrestling shows. Even when you had absolute garbage shows. They have, I think one of the recent Meltzer Awards had Dark, and Dark Elevation has been better shows than Raw and SmackDown. Do you think that WWE takes that personally? Would you see a WWE wrestler go out there and talk about how Meltzer and Alvarez have this army of guys against them? And they literally do. There's literally armies of people that go out there and shit on everything WWE puts together. They still do it to NXT. They're still doing it because they changed NXT, so everything NXT does is bad. So you don't have any place to talk about Cornette and his army of the cult of Cornette who doesn't like AEW. Look, you did it to yourself. You created this army of people who love you, so now people are being extra critical. That's just the nature of the beast. If you don't like it, I don't know what more I don't know what to tell you. Just going to take the L. All right, so the second note, Awesome Kong pulled back the curtain a little bit on her time in AEW, which it doesn't seem like it was a big positive. So she said, quote, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing the crew over there at AEW, especially since we're just up and running. We're all new executives and trying to think outside the box and really giving it our all. Something new, something that we haven't seen. We've seen it all. We're trying to give you something that you haven't seen. I felt unheard. I wasn't in control. All I could do was say, I have this idea of X, Y, and Z. I couldn't get in the room where final decisions were made. Believe me, Kaya stalked that room. I would stay there after big meetings and pick up the water bottles and cups like, you need me to go? Okay. I tried to get into that last meeting where decisions were made. Never a chance to. That's just not going to happen. So I'm not going to push it. When you see this, and she makes a box with her hands, that's not a read or a critique. That's just who was comfortable making decisions. What do? It's out of my control. If I had control, give me 15 minutes of Kaya. Kaya's 15 minutes of fame. Go out there and steal the show from them boys. You, and you, Nyla, go steal the show from the boys. So she was talking about basically, this is kind of why she decided to leave AEW. She didn't say it, but you could pretty much tell that this is why she left AEW. Is that despite the fact that AEW claims that they listen to everybody and that their talents have all sites of control, she, who was one of the veterans at the time, Awesome Kong had spent kind of years as a top star in TNA, Now, I'm not saying like she was, Chris Jericho or anything like that, but it was at least generally believed that, especially when she made the jump and she didn't go back to WWE, instead she went to AEW, it was a belief that she was going to be the centerpiece, the pillar, as you could say, the foundation of the female division. There was a belief that that's what she was coming in for. And we saw that she very quickly fizzled out. They very quickly moved on from Awesome Kong, and she never really got she never really grew wings in AEW. In fact, as I sit here and talk to you right now, I cannot think of a single Awesome Kong match that she had in AEW. I can't think of one. So if she did have one, it wasn't a meaningful one. So she couldn't get her feet off the ground. I get it. It's frustrating, especially since, again, she was brought in for the name value, and she was brought in as somebody that was going to bring some legitimacy to the women's division of the company, because she was considered one of the serious competitors of TNA's women's division. But Awesome Kong is the Samoa Joe of the women's division, where it's all smoke and mirrors. And I learned this from watching Marky D123, because he does really deep dives into TNA, that the Awesome Kong run was literally just like a year or two. We had this mystical idea of what Awesome Kong had, this awesome run, and she was so great. And it was really like on like a year or two. But she was there for much longer. And the same thing with Samoa Joe, where you had the Samoa Joe undefeated streak, and he was having badass matches, even when he wasn't really being pushed as heavily as he was at first. But it was all smoke and mirrors, because there was a lot more of Samoa Joe losing to nobodies than Samoa Joe going over on Kurt Angle. And it's the same thing with Awesome Kong, with her losing to basically nobodies in the women's division. But she had made enough of a name for herself that this was a fresh start, and people thought that she was going to get that opportunity. And apparently, she wasn't going to get that. And that's why she walked out. And now she's retired. So, I don't know, man. I just wish that she had... Awesome Kong is a tremendous wrestler. As far as her persona, her look, and everything. I was hoping, and to be honest, I hope she would come back to WWE. I thought she didn't really get much of a run in WWE. She didn't get to do much of anything. But I think that, she was one of those before her time types in WWE. She was in the right place at the right time when it comes to TNA, and she should have been utilized better in AEW. She maybe should have been the first women's champion, just to set the standard. But apparently, that's not what they wanted. So, all right. So I got one more note to discuss, and I think this is actually very interesting. I wasn't going to do it, but I decided it actually fits here. Matter of fact, it fits here perfectly. Marco Stunt talked about the waterfall effect of AEW bringing in older WWE talent. He says, quote, "I think there was a point where they got a taste of what that star power could do. It's kind of like a drug, I guess, in a way. You get a little bit and you're like, ooh, that felt good. That was nice. Let's get a little bit more in there. So it just starts waterfalling and waterfalling. You're like, oh, this guy's not there anymore. Let's bring him in. And so that's the kind of where it got you. And it wasn't bad when I was being weaned out, but it definitely got the way. It's definitely more that way now, it feels like. It's crazy how, I'm reading a transcription from SES Scoops, and all the and stuff is still in there. But you get the general idea of what he's trying to say, is that once AEW started to see what kind of attention they can get from bringing in a WWE guys like Bryan Danielson and CM Punk, they started just kind of relying on that. And it's the exact same fucking thing TNA did. It's the exact same fucking thing TNA did. It happened to TNA too. It's so crazy. Vince has this, and it's crazy. We realized that it was a Vince McMahon tactic when he mentioned it on the conference call, and he says that hopefully we can give them some more talent. We realized then, normally I would say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, people are making it up. But when Vince said out of his mouth, maybe we can give them some more talent, he knew exactly what they were going to do. He knew that they were going to pick up all of the people that he released. So he felt okay releasing all of these people because he knew they were going to have jobs. But also he knew that some of these people were going to come with hefty price tags. And there comes a time where the money you spend is not going to be equal to the money you bring in. Now, Marco Stunt as a talent had to know that the writing was on the wall, and this is what a lot of us in this space was talking about. That eventually, you still got the same 2 fucking hours that you had when you started. And we've seen what happens is that you bring in more guys, you start seeing people get disgruntled. You know, Marco Stunt got released. A bunch of guys from the Dark Order got released. Leo Rush got, released, even though he wasn't like one of the originals. Fucking Cody left. Fucking Cody left. One of the guys who was, the tip of the spear, he walked out. Now you got MJF, will he, won't he? People don't know if it's a storyline or not. Some people think it is, some people think it isn't, but him not being paid likely is the real thing. Now you got people who outperform the WWE guys, they want more money. The people, and these guys come in and come with hefty price tags. So now the cost of your show has increased. Now what? But like all addictions, there is for a bell will toll. That's the best way to put it. You can't be addicted to anything in the world. And I think that he put it very, very well with that whole saying it was like an addiction. It's like a drug. Because you do get all this positive attention, especially from certain pockets of society, especially because WWE willing to take the heat of releasing a guy like Cesaro or releasing somebody like Ember Moon or Dakota Kai or something like that. They got a lot of heat for that, from the fan base. People who liked NXT, people who liked, Keith Lee. They're like, how could you fire him? Why? And then AEW comes in like the superhero, dun, 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 we signed them, and everybody's like, yay! So AEW gets a little bit of, positive public relations out of that thing, but now you got a hefty contract on your hands. Now you got this guy on the roster who makes a lot of money, and you have to try to figure out how you can make that money back. You got Samoa Joe, great. Now what? Now you got less time for some of the other guys that you had on your roster already. You dig? You got less time for Marco Stunt. You got less time for Orange Cassidy. Like, notice how Orange Cassidy became a lot more prominent on the shows when Danielson went down, when Punk went down. He was one of the stars at first. They was pushing Orange Cassidy all day. Then some of the bigger stars came in, Orange Cassidy, they fell back on him. Now those guys got hurt, Orange Cassidy's back in. Like, I've noticed things. All right? So, I understand what Marco Stunt was trying to say, and, it's easy for me to be like, Marco Stunt sucks. Of course he was going to lose his job once they started bringing in real stars. It's like, yeah, but he's not wrong. There's a lot of guys who are going to be victims of this, these guys coming in and making a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to suffer, And it's going to be guys we don't care about, at least not right now. Cody was probably the biggest one that they was going to lose for a while. But I'm telling you, he's not the only one. He can't be. It's not just Cody and MJF complaining. There's going to be some other people backstage like, hold on. This thing ain't right. My push has disappeared. My spot is, not there anymore. What's going on? It might not get re-signed. Might be a little different going into the future. So, it's something to look out for sure. It's definitely something to look out for. And I'm interested in seeing how far this addiction is going to go. Is it going to completely consume them like it did TNA? It kind of consumed WCW too. ECW was pretty much the only company that didn't really bring in every cast off of WWF. Even though they did bring in quite a few, they didn't bring in all of them. And it became a point where, guys like Bam Bam Bigelow were simply making too much money, and Paul couldn't keep that guy on the roster, so he ended up leaving. But WCW was paying dudes exorbitant amounts of money just to have him on the roster, just so Vince wouldn't have him. Because they believe, hey, you make stars, we take stars. Without understanding that he just makes more stars. And that's kind of the general idea of WWE right now is they started seeing that, AEW was a soft place to push a lot of their aging stars. Even though the guys were just like, I think Bray Wyatt was 35. Keith Lee was like 37. He wasn't that old. But Danielson was up there. He was 40. Cesaro was over 40. So you have a soft spot for these guys to land and continue their careers and make a ton of money. And it's a temporary boost for the competition. It's a temporary boost. But ultimately, now this guy's he's an albatross around the neck of that company, because it's not just enough for you to be a soft place for him to land. These people also want you to push him. These people also want you to go out there and make Cesaro a world champion. That's what they want. Is that what they're going to get, though? If they don't, then you get people complaining you're misusing them, like they did with Miro, like they're doing with Danielson, like they did with Adam Cole. They're looking at a lot of guys who are being brought in and saying, Samoa Joe's another one. He's made a Ring of Honor champion, for Christ's sake. Come on. Fucking Wheeler Yuta is also a Ring of Honor champion. Ugh. But that's an interesting thing from Marco Stunt, and I actually think I gotta give him some credit. Give him his flowers on this one. That was a good note. I would say it is an addiction. All right, last note. Even though I say I only had 2, we're gonna do 4. The last note is that Santana is injured, which sucks because Santana is very good. There's also some whispers that Santana and Ortiz are not on the best terms, and that maybe Santana is on his way out of AEW. And I'll say it till the cows come home. I forget which version of LAX they are. I think they're LAX 4.0, or is it 5.0? I know the original LAX had Homicide and Machete, and then it was Homicide and Hernandez. Then it was some other version of LAX, or was that Mexican America? Whatever. But, these two guys, similar to Awesome Kong earlier, were 2 of the guys I thought were going to be the centerpiece of tag team in AEW. Like, I knew they had the Young Bucks there too, but I thought that, Santana and Ortiz were going to be much bigger stars than they turned out to be, and I'm really disappointed in how AEW utilized them. And I'm pretty sure they're disappointed too, because those guys were getting pushed in Impact. They were stars in Impact. They were, I think, the top tag team in Impact next to the Lucha Brothers. And now the Lucha Brothers got their tag team title run, which was okay, I guess. But they didn't get nearly the amount of push that you would think they would have gotten, especially since Santana Ortiz came in on the ground floor of AEW. So there's some rumors that Santana's on his way out, at least by himself. We don't know about Ortiz, but I'm a big fan of Santana. I think he rules. He's really good. He could be a great solo wrestler. I've never been a big fan of Ortiz. Santana is where the talent is. So hopefully, he can successfully come back from his injury. If him and Ortiz are going to continue to be a tag team, I'm cool with that too. I think they could really go back to Impact and kill it. WWE doesn't care about tag teams. So I wouldn't say, you should go to NXT. Like, yeah, then they'd be a tag team for like a month or 6 months, and then they'd break them up. So, going back to Impact might be great for them, But let's finally get into this show. Let's talk about it. All right, so Wardlow wins the TNT Championship in a street fight that was not really a street fight. Scorpio Sky came to the ring with like 10 people, like a whole boatload of folks. And they were just outside the ring, and when Wardlow went outside the ring, they jumped him. Kind of like a street fight style or a lumberjack style thing. Wardlow hit a swanton bomb. Yeah, another little interesting tidbit. Wardlow had an interview where he talked about how he wanted to be like Jeff Hardy growing up. And I think he actually met Jeff Hardy. He probably saw Jeff Hardy have all these problems. It was kind of like, nah, I'd rather be a meat mountain instead. But I'm still going to do the swanton bomb. Really wish he hadn't done that. Anyway, he did a really good job of wrecking the entourage. He really didn't have to do much to them except throw them around a little bit, and then they never came back. Powerbomb Symphony was 3 powerbombs and foot on the chest and a pinfall. So then we got confetti. floating into the air, and it was a bit much, a little overdue for Wardlow to win the title. I mean, I'm glad they finally got there, but, it took a while. It took some time, but they finally got there. Wardlow was the TNT champion. Scorpio Sky had no business with the belt anyway. It was just unfortunate. Maybe they're going to try to put the title back on its playing field, back to where Miro had it. I know Miro really said it best, that this title was the best when he had it. And the moment he lost it, he went into the gutter. Can't really blame Sammy Guevara for that, because he should never have won it. The idea being that it's the booking's fault. Sammy Guevara is not a champion level guy, especially not a babyface. He shouldn't have been the guy that beat Miro for the belt anyway. But Scorpio Sky has zero business with it. Now he's got it, and then he had it. Now Wardlow has it. Wardlow is at least over. It would have been better if he would have won it shortly after he beat MJF. I think they waited too long. I think part of the problem is that they wanted to give Scorpio Sky a run because they wanted to try to avoid the whole racism stuff. When you're trying to navigate things without just doing stuff, like, it's okay for Scorpio Sky to be a transitional champion. For him to have the belt and him just immediately carry it to lose to Wardlow. You had no plans with him anyway. So that's one thing about WWE. They don't seem to care about, being called racist or anything like that. If they feel like there's something that serves the story, they're going to do it. And Wardlow killing Scorpio Sky and winning the TNT title shortly after his match with MJF should have happened. But now, since they waited till some of his pops died down, they're hoping that this is going to save him and bring him back. And I hope so too. The match itself wasn't much of a match, and it wasn't much of a street fight either, but we've seen enough of the whole blood and guts and people getting stabbed in the head with stuff and hit with shit. So I was glad that it was over. All right, so Jon Moxley did his shoulder dance. He just does his shoulder thing all the time. And he cut a promo. His promo says that people are trying to make a name off of him, and that people have lost money betting against him, hoping that he gets caught off guard, thinking that he doesn't know Brody King. He said he knows what kind of monster Brody King is, but y'all must have forgot what kind of monster he is. And then later he goes through Brody King and what he knows about Brody King and all the stuff about blood and guts. Then he says that he wants to know if Brody King has a monster-sized heart, and that the Blackpool Combat Club finds your limits and pushes them. I like that line. That line was good. So that was the setup to the main event. Malachi Black also had a promo for the main event. Says that the decisions that we make, something about decisions that they make, and then that their violence is by design, and that you think you know violence or pain, and that Brody King is going to make sure that the pain you understand tonight is going to go beyond physical pain. This brings us to the main event, Brody King versus Jon Moxley for the AEW interim world title. Moxley wins with the Bulldog choke. No finishing angle. Nothing to make this more interesting. Brody King, this is his, second singles match, maybe? The match itself was sloppy, because, these guys, Moxley isn't much of a worker. I guess I'm a big fan of Moxley. I'm a big fan of the character, of the persona, but his work has never been the best, despite the fact that they try to push him as a wrestler guy. He always comes across as a little bit sloppier and a little bit light. I used to see it in New Japan, where he would throw these knees and he would miss by a country mile, or he very lightly knee a guy in the chest. It was just ridiculous. Now tonight he kind of did the same thing with the elbow strikes again. People are starting to notice his elbow strikes are kind of soft and kind of weak, which doesn't do his character any favors. I mean, he's supposed to be a brawling and a brute. Maybe he should actually make some contact with these things. But the match itself was a little weird, but it went exactly as you would think. Jon Moxley wins. No big deal. No surprises. Nothing more to be gained or lost in that whole ordeal. So, I'm beginning to really think about, what did they expect in terms of ratings for this show, considering Brody King is an unknown quantity, and that there really is no belief that Brody King would win. I mean, he literally just won a battle royal to get into this match. But at least that's better than this Mark Sterling thing. Apparently, Mark Sterling now has a petition to get Swerve Strickland booted off of the AEW roster because he's a snake. Oh, boy. He goes up to Mr. Keith Lee. Greetings and salutations, Mr. Mark Sterling. How may I help thee? And Mr. Mark Sterling talks about needing Keith Lee's signature so that he can get Strickland off the roster. He says, Mr. Sterling, sir, Mr. Strickland and I, we may have had cross words in recent weeks, but we are still partners and the best of friends. And to be quite honest with you, sir, if I were to sign said petition, my tag team championship pursuits would be washed away. Mr. Sterling, what do you and Mr. Tony Nese seek to gain from this petition? And I don't think Mark Sterling even had an answer to that question. I'm concerned. I'm like, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this now? Keith Lee should not be involved with this. Nobody should be involved with this. Mark Sterling's angle on this show is dumb as fuck. But it wasn't over. That wasn't it. Mark Sterling went to the back. He kept walking around with this goddamn petition. And he tried to get Orange Cassidy to sign the petition. He told Orange Cassidy, hey, you're the last signature I need to finish off this petition to get Swerve Strickland booted off of the roster. Orange Cassidy says that he doesn't sign anything his lawyer hasn't looked over first, which is actually smart business. Thumbs up to Orange Cassidy for being an intelligent businessman. Thumbs down to Orange Cassidy because he's hanging out with weirdos who are wearing tie-dye for some reason. What the fuck are they doing? Like, what the fuck are they doing? They just look like idiots. They're wearing like painter's clothes and it's tie-dyed. It's ridiculous. Danhausen appeared out of nowhere. Reasons unknown. He's talking over Sterling and Orange Cassidy. They're trying to figure this thing out. And the decision that they've come up with is that Tony Nese is going to fight Orange Cassidy on Rampage. And if Tony Nese defeats Orange Cassidy, then Orange Cassidy must sign the petition. And look, this is Booker of the Year. This is creative genius shit. This is dumb. This is dumb, bro. This is just a stupid angle. Like, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, how does that even work? Since when do people being hired and fired a democratic decision? Oh, if enough people sign a petition, we can get you kicked off the roster. Oh, okay. That's how that works? Why haven't you done it to anybody else then? Like, there's some really hated people on this roster. And we picked Swerve Strickland. That's bizarre. Interesting thing, Swerve Strickland doesn't seem to care. He was involved with something else on this show. He was involved with something completely different on this show. So it was kind of weird that he was even involved in this. So Butcher and the Blade lost to Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee. It was pretty cut and dry. There was an interview not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks, where Swerve Strickland was kind of pissed that people don't like the tag team between him and Keith Lee. He sort of implied racism, which I should have done a video about. I'm just now thinking about it, where he says that him and Keith Lee being partners is similar to Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, and nobody said anything about them. It's like, look, Swerve, here's the deal, baby. Everybody wanted Keith Lee in AEW because we wanted to see Keith Lee get a big push. We didn't want to see him be in a fucking tag team with some terrible rap musician. Look, I like Swerve. Big fan of Swerve. Like Swerve when he was in MLW. Liked him when he was in NXT. Like him now. But you're an albatross around the neck of Keith Lee. Now, you may think, and some people may think, that, hell, Keith Lee is only getting the spotlight right now because of Swerve. Because there's no real position to put Keith Lee in. Keith Lee is in the same position as somebody like Samoa Joe or somebody like Miro, where they're a big guy. They should be in the mix of the world title, but they're not. They're just kind of big guys on the roster. And they should be doing more than they are, but as long as they aren't losing, people are not complaining. But he's very much out of the way, you know? And I don't see this tag team thing going very far. You know, it seems like there might be building up to a separation between the two, which benefits Swerve more than it benefits Keith Lee at this point. And we're looking at this situation where Keith Lee came in with all this fanfare, and he was, again, one of the biggest, you know, captures for this company in terms of people who had goodwill when they came in. Fans wanted the best for Keith Lee, and they're not getting it. So some people are complaining. Some people are pretty mad. You can't just be like, well, those people must be racist. No, they're not. You know, don't be an asshole. No, they're not. They're just looking at this and saying this is not worthy of Keith Lee's time. What's also not worthy of Keith Lee's time is wrestling the Young Bucks, but we're going to end up with that. So, Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks are very, very angry for reasons unknown. They march to the ring. Hobbs is talking about them disrespecting them, said that we are grown men, y'all trick ass bitches. I'm like, whoa, what the hell? Then Ricky Starks get on the microphone and says that we could have ended y'all careers. We proved to y'all on the microphone and in the ring that we're levels above y'all. Y'all levels below us. He threatened to beat the hell out of the Swerve. He was real fired up. And then the Young Bucks came out there. The Young Bucks said that these two teams have been doing pretty well. They've been eating well, but they set the table. And said that they all had a great triple threat match at Double or Nothing, but they had a 4.5 star match. But that's an off night for the Young Bucks. And then challenged them to a Triple or Nothing 3-way tag title match next week on Dynamite. The fans chanted FTR through this whole thing. And as soon as the Young Bucks appeared, the fans started chanting FTR. And the Young Bucks said that they're better than them. They're better than FTR. What's the purpose of this triple threat stuff? You know, that's what I want to know. Like, what's the purpose of this triple threat stuff? Why not just have those two teams wrestle each other and then you wrestle the winners? Why does it have to be a triple threat match? Why can't the two teams just, you know, have, I mean, they've been feuding for a little while. You can afford to throw a gimmick on there. You know, you can afford to do a best 2 out of 3 falls or something like that. And just to decide who's going to be the number one contender. Well, they can't decide who's the number one contenders because FTR are the number one contenders. And they're obviously doing a storyline where the Young Bucks are ducking them. Fine. I don't mind that. But I don't like this triple threat tag team idea. It's silly. It's silly. That's a waste of Keith Lee's time. It's also a waste of Powerhouse Hobbs' time. He definitely should be doing something else. Ricky Starks has such potential. I know he's small and kind of skinny, but he has so much potential. These guys could be doing so much more. They should be featured so much more on this show. And I think every time Starks touch a microphone, we see why he should be cutting promos and should have more of the spotlight than he actually does. And it's almost like the guy who gets a lot of credit for doing a lot of recruiting in AEW isn't it really a great recruit? Because you would think that if you look at performance, you're looking purely at performance. Ricky Starks does not miss. He has good matches. He has good promos. At this point, he's been doing this for over a year. We should be slowly but surely progressing him up the roster. You know, he should have been in the mix for the TNT title rather than fucking Scorpio Sky, who couldn't cut a great promo if you wrote it for him and used the fucking Rock's voice to project it. He couldn't get the fuck over. But we gave him the TNT title. We had Ricky Starks right here. Ricky Starks is still running around with his fucking FTW belt. It's been like 2 fucking years. Get rid of that goddamn thing. Nobody cares about that. I don't know, man. I would think if you was looking at performance and you're supposedly a fan and you're watching this shit, how can you ignore how good Ricky Starks is? You're just ignoring it. Like, oh yeah, he's good, but he's good enough to wrestle on Rampage every week or Dark or whatever. And we'll get to him on Dynamite when we get to him. I don't see how you could look at somebody like Hobbs, who is still sort of rough around the edges, and not want to feature that guy every week. You know? I don't know. I don't get it. And the wrestling, the Young Bucks, who cares about the Young Bucks, really? Nobody gives a shit. Their whole gimmick is, we started AEW, so we're the best tag team. Like, that's not no, that's not how this works, sir. Doesn't matter if you started the company, that doesn't make you the best. That's Jeff Jarrett thinking. Well, I started the company, therefore I'm the best. No. All right, so Christian and Luchasaurus came out there. Christian called the fans names, says that everybody wants to know why Luchasaurus decided to align with him. And I was like, matter of fact, yes, sir, I do want to know that. Please explain. And then we were unfortunately interrupted by Matt Hardy. And I was like, Matthew, what do you want? What do you want, sir? Matt Hardy says that Christian is the Michael Jordan of being an asshole. And that Jungle Boy was his friend and didn't deserve what Christian did to him. Christian then retorted that you're trying to come out here trying to pretend like you were best friends with Jungle Boy, like you know him better than me. You're starting to make your brother sound like the sober one. And everybody was like, oh, and that's kind of how the promo went. Matt, you whack, you twisted, your girl's a hoe, your brother's a drunk bum, and everybody knows. And I was like, oh, that was pretty much the promo. Is that whenever Matt said something, Christian just retorted that Jeff Hardy was a drunk. And that was it. That's pretty much the promo. Matt tried to redeem himself, saying that Christian is just trying to use Luchasaurus to make money, and that he knows a lot about that. That he regrets doing that to Butcher and the Blade and Private Party, and karma has come for him. He's going to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Christian called Matt Hardy a clout chaser, then went right back into talking about Jeff being a drunk by saying that Matt will use anybody, his kids, his wife, the dilapidated boat, anything. He would even turn a blind eye to his brother's issues to get one last run. And then said that he's the most embarrassing thing about his family. And then they proceeded to beat Matt Hardy's ass. This was tough. This was tough. This wasn't bad. You know, I'm not one of these people, one of these hypocrites out here. A lot of hypocrites running around here. These people who are so upset when WWE made fun of Jeff. They didn't even make fun of Jeff. It was a redemption story for Jeff when they did the whole angle with Jeff and Sheamus. For starters, Jeff was involved in that story. Jeff had input in that story, right? Jeff was there. He was being blamed for something he didn't do. And for him, it was about accepting who he is and accepting what he is and trying to find redemption through that story with Sheamus. That's what that story was about. Everybody just whittled it down to, you're making a story about Jeff being a drunk. That's bad taste. Bad taste. But here, everybody was like, ooh, Christian, sick burn, bro. Oh, God, he's so good on the microphone. I knew that was going to come, but I had so much fun with it. It's like, fuck you. What? For starters, Jeff is not even involved with this. They dragged Jeff into this. And he's not even there to defend himself or anything. He's just they're bludgeoning Matt with Jeff. Just bludgeoning him, just over and over again. And I'm like, that's fucked up. At the same time, though, I mean, it's harsh reality. It's a harsh reality. I ain't say Christian was a liar. He told the truth. But I'm like, where's all the people who are so upset that WWE used Jeff Hardy's drunkenness in a storyline with Jeff Hardy in it? This is AEW doing the exact same thing, minus having Jeff Hardy actually, in a story to explain himself or to seek redemption or anything. Like, Come on, bro. You know, calling AEW fans hypocrites don't change people's opinions. They just ignore it. But that don't mean it's not there and I don't see it. And I'm glad that there are some people who did notice it. Most of them tend to be WWE fans who noticed that WWE was lambasted for mentioning Jeff Hardy's drinking or whatever. And AEW was perfectly fine. And then nobody said anything. Very odd decision. Am I interested in Matt Hardy versus Luchasaurus? Absolutely not. Am I interested in Matt Hardy versus Christian? Not really. I have zero interest in Matt Hardy, period. You know, he needs to classify himself as obsolete because Matt Hardy is done. All right? Matt's done. He needs to go home until Maxwell is ready to wrestle. When Maxwell is ready, which got to be another 10 to 13 years. I think he's, 6 now? Give him another 10 years or so, 10, 12 years. Then we might be able to see Matt again. But Matt walking around like Stilt Man for the rest of his life, it's over. His knees do not bend. He's like Gumby out there. No, we're good. All right, we're good, sir. You're walking like a gingerbread man. We don't have any interest in watching Matt Hardy wrestle, let alone watching him wrestle Kanosaurus. I don't want to see that. I don't care about Luchasaurus. All right. And as far as the storyline analysis is concerned, they did a good job of teasing that they were going to tell, but then getting interrupted, so we got denied that, so now they can kick it down the road. That's perfectly fine, too. I think that was fine. I just wish it wasn't Matt Hardy. Because I know they did it because, it's easy for Christian to get heat on Matt. They have history. They're friends, probably, And plus, if you're worried about the ratings for your show, you want to get some recognizable names on here. So having Christian and Matt Hardy on the same segment gets people who are fans of the Attitude Era or fans of old WWF to pay more attention. Like, oh, okay, Matt Hardy's here. Let's see what he has to say. And then he gets roasted by Christian in front of the world. And Jeff sitting at home, just kind of like, what the fuck I got to do with this? Wow, I'm getting dissed about this. What's going on here? All right, there was a vignette for the Blackpool Combat Club and blood and guts and everything. This was good. Of course, they said it is not over. This leads to the Wheeler Yuta versus Daniel Garcia match that's going to take place at Ring of Honor's Death Before Dishonor on July 23rd, a week before SummerSlam. They're going to have another pay-per-view, a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. They're really robbing the AEW army. They're robbing these motherfuckers, boy. They're having pay-per-views like in short order. They just had a pay-per-view. Now they're about to have another one. The main event of this show will be Jay Lethal versus Samoa Joe, apparently. I don't think Jonathan Gresham is going to make this show. They're not doing our Ring of Honor any favors. When's the last time Mercedes Martinez was on this show? She's the Ring of Honor Women's Champion, and I haven't seen her in forever. I haven't seen Jonathan Gresham in forever. He's the World Champion. Whatever. Daniel Garcia cut a promo on this show where he basically said he wrestled Wheeler Yuta for an hour in blood and guts, and he's taking his best shots and all this kind of stuff. It wasn't nothing special. It wasn't nothing major. Sanjay Dutt, useless ass, also cut a promo where he talked about, finally Jay Lethal's going to get the match that he wanted, and Jay Lethal says that, they respect Samoa Joe. They don't take him lightly, but they will take his championship. They're cackling like Super Shredder and shit backstage. It's ridiculous. The Ring of Honor stuff, I don't know, man. I don't know how it's going to work. They need to just transport one of those shows. I may actually watch Dark Elevation. If they just say we're going to disband this show and reboot Ring of Honor, and that's going to be the Ring of Honor show, then I may actually watch it, because they're likely going to have a separate roster for that show. Speaking of which, there's been a lot of chatter about Colt Cabana, about whether he's going to be re-signed or not. Some people think that he will be. Some people think that he won't be. The belief is that if Colt Cabana is re-signed, he will likely be reassigned to Ring of Honor, just so him and CM Punk won't have to share a locker room. But, it is what it is. I'm not a big fan of Colt Cabana anyway, but I think it's kind of fucked up. The guy was one of the many people that when CM Punk came in, it kind of was like, you know what? We don't really need you anymore. Like, we really don't need you guys anymore. I'm sorry. It is what it is. But this Ring of Honor thing, they insist on doing it the way that they're doing it. I think they should just go ahead and fold Dark Elevation. Because what's the difference between Dark and Dark Elevation anyway? What's the difference? Just fold Elevation and tape Ring of Honor TV and put that up on YouTube. Put it up on the AEW YouTube. Create storylines for that show. And basically, I think that would at least get me to watch it. Because I would be like, okay, so it's a different roster. We may see some different things. We may experience some different things. But Tony Khan wants Ring of Honor to be visible on AEW TV too. And he's going to have a hard time juggling that without giving Ring of Honor its own space. And I think this is why, WWE was very smart to keep NXT UK, and all that shit away from SmackDown and Raw until you're ready to do something with it. Like, when they were ready to do, like, the Survivor Series, they kind of kept that shit away until they wanted to do Survivor Series and bring in NXT in. Then they integrated them in, and then they, dissipated them out later. It might not have been the smartest idea in the long run, but it was something, keep these brands separate for the most part. Because then you got to think about certain people are being shown and other people aren't. Again, Samoa Joe is talked about on this show without literally being there. Mercedes Martinez not seen. Wheeler Yuta is just carrying a belt around. Who the fuck knows? So same thing with FTR. It's like they can't defend them because there's no contenders, and there's no contenders because there's no division. There's no division because there's no fucking show. Which leads, of course, to FTR challenging the Briscoes, which I think is great. That's awesome. I like that. They're just going to run a rematch. So that was fine. I'm not going to go into any detail about the FTR's promo, because that was really the whole thing, is that they still believe they're the best tag team in the world, and the Briscoes was the hardest fight that they had, and they say, hey, you want to do it again? Also, Dax Harwood says that only one wrestling company puts tag teams on the back burner, which of course is WWE. And WWE does not give a shit about tag teams. It still manages to have bomb-ass tag team matches, despite the fact that they don't really care. Like, the Street Profits and the Usos brought it. The Creed brothers are going to bring it. They've been killing it for a while. And WWE does not give a shit about tag team wrestling. They don't give a fuck. And so that should tell you right there that they don't put a lot of emphasis on it and still do pretty well at it. All right, but that's the whole Ring of Honor shit. Now we have to talk about the Claudio Castagnoli, Jake Hager promo segment, which was absolutely ridiculous. Jake Hager, Elmer Hager, for fuck's sake. Claudio Castagnoli, he's not tough. He's not a tough guy like me. I'm an undefeated MMA fighter. He was never a world champion. He was never a world champion in Ring of Honor. You're never world champion in the WWE. You're not championship material. And then Claudio says that anybody who says that they want respect deserves none. And that my team beat your team at Blood and Guts. He says, well, it's not really your team. It was a team of the guys who bags you carry. Neither one of them cut a really good promo either. Which shows why, WWE did what they did with both of them. But they're going to have a match next week. That ought to be interesting. And by interesting, I mean probably put somebody to sleep. But come on. We gotta go give them a chance. All right, we're going to give them a chance. We're going to cut us some slack. We're not going to completely bury the guys. Claudio he ain't been there long enough to get buried. He spoke with some confidence at least. But Claudio was not a good promo. He's not a strong promo at all. All right, our boy Eddie Kingston came out there. He said that Chris Jericho made him a liar and that he didn't make Chris Jericho bleed. He wants to make Chris Jericho bleed. Jericho interrupted the promo and said that you want my blood? You want my blood? And then says that he had something for Eddie Kingston. Then he showed Ty Conti climbing this, I guess some kind of truck, some kind of SUV vehicle of some type. I don't know cars. And she just has her hand in the door jamb. She's just grabbing the door jamb, like casually grabbing the door jamb and just standing there with the door jamb. And then Ty Conti slams the door on her hand without even an attempt by anybody to hold Ruby Soho's hand in the door. Ruby just stood there in the same position, basically tap dancing, getting her goddamn Savion Glover on, slip sliding right there in one spot. Nobody else touched her. Nobody else did anything. It couldn't even afford to make it look good. You would think, and somebody who actually knows a little bit about this, there'd have been somebody, especially one of the big burly dudes, that would have had her hemmed up against the wall and had her arms stretched out, and then Ty Conti would have slammed her hand on the door. You know? That's what you would have had 2.0 hold her there and then slam her hand, and let Ty Conti slam her hand in the door. That would have been the better way to do it. No, they just had to have Ruby Soho completely unmolested. Now, she was groggy, I guess. But I was just sitting here like, this is something that had some potential right here, because I actually like the angle. But come on, bro. The amount of low effort that you put into this, there was no effort put into this. None. This was scheisse. All right? Absolute scheisse. And it had potential. And I have no interest in Ty Conti versus Ruby Soho. But at least you added some heat to it. This is serious, okay? But the execution of it, absolute basura. It was not good. Not good. Do better than that, man. You got to do better than that. You got to. Damn, what the fuck? Speaking of gotten to do better than this, the Dark Order came out there and wasted I don't know how much of our time. For Christ's sake, I wanted to drown myself in dirty dishwater rather than watch the fucking Dark Order. They came out there to say the Dark Order is forever because they're in Mr. Brody Lee's hometown. And the little one is there too, little Brody. He's present. QT Marshall then appears and says, how long do we have to put up with this charity case? It said his dad was a legend, but the boy takes after his mother. And that he needs to fight him right now or he's going to go back there and break all of his toys. Hangman Page comes out there, chases QT Marshall into the ring. Everybody beat up QT Marshall. And then the little boy gets the microphone and says, I would fight you right now, but I'll wait until I'm 18. And look, I'm going to be as gentle as I can because little Brody is a kid and I don't like talking shit about children. You know, he should not be on this TV screen. He shouldn't still be there. You know, we need to casually and quietly move on. I know that there's a lot of people who say, well, Stu Grayson's gone, Alan Angels is gone, there's probably going to be some other members of the Dark Order that's going to be gone. So you want to reiterate to them, to the fans of the Dark Order, that the Dark Order is not being systematically taken apart by, you know, high contracts of former WWE guys who are being brought in. And you want to let people know, oh yeah, we're going to be here forever. I get that. You want to do something special for little Brody because he's there, do it off camera. All right. I was not a fan of it, you know, before, but now I'm really not a fan of it. Now we got QT Marshall coming out there talking about he's going to break the kids' toys. And I'm like, this is such a waste of time. This is so dumb. There's no benefit to this. I mean, for some people, maybe it's a feel-good moment. Maybe if you're emotionally invested in this whole Brody Lee thing, you're like, oh yeah, this is, you know, something you enjoy. But I'm not a big fan of Brody Lee. So I'm just kind of like, why are we still treating this guy like he's fucking Bruno or Hulk Hogan or something like that? Like, you know, he was just, all right, you know, can we finally move on? Like, his wife works there. She's collecting a paycheck from the company. We don't need his son on TV too. You know, still hanging out with these fucking guys. You know, like, the kids want to be the mascot. That's fine. If you want to bring the kid in so he can train and all that kind of stuff, great. I don't mind that. But he's 12 right now. We don't need this. We don't need underage kids anywhere near the ring doing this stuff. To me, this is not really beneficial. WWE did the Conor McCallick, what was it? The Conor the Crusher stuff. And it was very limited, and that kid was dying. That kid was like on his deathbed pretty much every day until he actually died. Little Brody ain't about to die, as far as I know. He's pretty healthy. He might be, a little fucked up because his dad died. All the more reason why he shouldn't be on TV. Like, we need to not do that. You want to make him a little bit a part of the show, do it in between commercials or after the show and dark matches and stuff like that. We don't need him on TV. We don't need you shooting angles for Little Brody on TV. Enough. Let alone shit that involves QT Marshall. Come on, man. Cut me some slack with this QT Marshall shit. Throw that motherfucker in a blender. He sucks. For some reason, AEW has decided that Jim Ross is only good enough to call half a show. So now he only comes out during the second half of the show. Apparently, they figure, hey, look, he hates at least half the show as it is. So we're going to make sure he gets the good half of the show, which is usually the second part. All right, so Jim Ross is there to call Penta El Scuro versus Rush. And this match was fine. There was a lot of chest chopping in this match. They just do that. They just chop each other in the chest 100 times. I think that I would have enjoyed the match a little bit more if it had some storyline to it. I know there's some heat between Andrade and Death Triangle and Los Ingobernables. I get that. I know all about all of that. But we still have to put some spice on this match. You can't just have Excalibur yell about some shit and then, even if it's shit that I know, but I'm a wrestling nerd. I know about Rush. I know about him being Ring of Honor World Champion. I already know that. But there's other people who don't know. Their introduction to Rush was him being in a battle royal for 2 minutes on fucking Friday. That was their introduction. Like we didn't even have Andrade introduce Rush. Nobody introduced Rush. There was no video package for Rush. Nobody did anything to make this guy feel like he was supposed to be a big deal. And it seems to me, and Rush is a guy that, again, WWE was kind of trying to recruit Rush. When he was in Ring of Honor and his contract was coming up, WWE wanted him. And it was Andrade who said, no, English, no. Because he wanted out at the same time. As you can see, he's a muscular guy. He's charismatic when he's given the opportunity to be. His English is not horrible, but it's not great either. I like Rush, but, and I think this was a fine outing for him. It wasn't the best match he's ever had. It wasn't the worst match he's ever had. It was hard for some people to get into it because for some, this is the first time they've ever seen him. So it's like they don't know what he can do. They don't know anything about El Toro Blanco. They don't know nothing about that. He didn't even come out in his gear, with the suit, with the mask and everything. They didn't even do that. Which I think would have been great for his character if he'd did what Andrade does. Andrade comes out in his suit with his mask on and he takes everything off. Rush should have did the same thing. Should have come out in his suit with his mask. So at least that he had a character and now he's, been unmasked and everything. That would have been nice, but they didn't even do that. The match itself was fine. There was a package power driver by Penta. Andrade put Rush's foot on the ropes. The finish came with more mask snatching and a small package so that Rush could pin Penta. The mask snatching. There's so much mask snatching nowadays. I'm beginning to think that's becoming a bit of a crutch. And when it comes to these Mexican guys, we're just going to start snatching masks because it's an easy way of being able to beat them without, beating them flat. That we can actually just snatch the mask and their version of hitting them in the nuts or something like that. Because we know that now they care more about their mask than they care about a match. So, all right. Rush, fine outing. Beating Penta, good win. I didn't mind it. Let's see what else we got here. All right, the Acclaimed and the Gun Club defeated Roughing It and Fuego del Sol. This was, oh God. So Max Caster was about to rap. His microphone got snatched by one of the Gun Boys. So they apparently are not friendly with the Acclaimed at this point in time. There was some tension between the two teams. Leon Ruff was present. Fuego del Sol was present. The other two guys, I don't even know who they are. Was it Bear Country? I don't remember already. After the Acclaimed and the Gun Club win the match, they got into a bit of an argument, a bit of a tiff, to which the Gun Club attacked the Acclaimed and beat them up. Billy told them to cut it out, separated them, and then he blasted Max Caster and knocked him down. Anthony Bowens climbed up to his feet and very sadly offered to be scissored by Daddy Gunn, to which he was then beat up and fame-assered by Billy Gunn. So they teased that Billy Gunn was going to turn on his boys, only for him to double back and blood is thicker than water, stay with his boys, and beat up on the Acclaimed. So it was a babyface turn for the Acclaimed. Perfectly fine with the Acclaimed having a babyface turn. I'm not upset with that. I think we were going in that direction anyway. Good heat for the Gun Club. Not a problem with that. This was just kind of nothing though. This felt like something that was slated to happen on Dark, but they just decided to put it on Dynamite instead. I'm guessing that they really just want people to like the Acclaimed, and I think they're going to have enough to get over. So, okay, whatever. Miro cut a promo where he talked about Malachi Black. He just randomly wants to fight Malachi Black now. I think it was because he spit in his face at the pay-per-view. I forgot about that already. So he said that Malachi Black collects the weak. He despises the weak, and he disposes of them. He says that Malachi Black preys on the flawed while he is flawless, and that the Redeemer is going to come from the House of Black enraged. And I was like, okay, now you got me. Miro versus Malachi Black, you got me. I'm interested. You know, you've piqued my interest. You finally tickled my taint when it comes to something on this fucking show. You know? And at least we have a good inciting incident where Miro had an opportunity to win another title, and Malachi Black spit in his face, cost him that title, even though, you know, neither one of them lost. Neither one of them won, rather. It was Malachi Black who cost Miro the title, and now Miro is pissed about it. The question is, though, who's the babyface? Because Miro is talking about, you know, still talking about destroying heaven and hell, and Malachi Black, they wasn't even talking about him tonight. So it's almost as if he didn't even know this was occurring yet. And then we took Malachi Black's heater, Brody King, and we just beat him tonight. So Miro won't really get over by beating Brody King. We just saw Brody King get beat. He has almost zero momentum coming into this shit anyway. So that means Miro's going to have to beat up on Buddy Matthews. Okay, that could still be fun. You know, Miro versus all three of those guys could still be fun. And just for the matches and the promos that could come out of this, it could be fun. These characters might do well against each other. They're both spiritually based characters. So this could work. And I'm finally excited about something when it comes to AEW after, you know, Danielson is not there anymore. So I'm good with this. We got Nyla Rose and Marina Shafir versus Toni Storm and Thunder Rosa. Toni Storm and Thunder Rosa win the match. I don't see why we needed so much Nyla Rose or Marina Shafir on this TV. You know, why do we need them? What do we need them for? Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm as a tag team, what for? There are no women's tag team titles. What are they teaming up for? Thunder Rosa is the world champion. Shouldn't she be wrestling contenders for her title? Shouldn't there be more contenders for her belt? I get it. Toni Storm, we need to do something with her. She's hot, hot, hot. Absolutely. But she just lost. So shouldn't we be moving her out of the way? Shouldn't we be getting somebody else in here? Where's Athena? Where's Chris Statlander? Shouldn't, you know, somebody be trying to climb the ladder to wrestle Thunder Rosa? It seems like people care more about Jade Cargill being the champion than they care about Thunder Rosa being the champion. And I think that was something Thunder Rosa even herself noticed. And it's pretty clear now that you have no real plan with Thunder Rosa, and she doesn't really have that much in the way of momentum either. You know? Like, she beat Toni Storm, which she probably should have lost, if we're being honest. You know, she beat Toni Storm, derailed Toni Storm, and now we just got, you know, them still being buddies. And it's like, maybe we need to turn Toni heel. You know, maybe in this match, Toni should have blasted Thunder Rosa in the head with the belt or something like that. You know, maybe we should have done something to continue their story if we had no other contenders. Otherwise, we need to mix some more people in here. You know, we need to rotate Nyla Rose the fuck out, because I don't know why Nyla Rose keeps finding Nyla Rose's self on my fucking television. And Marina Shafir is an absolute garbage bin. She's absolutely rubbish. I don't even want to see her on TV to do jobs. All right? We don't need any more Nyla Rose. We don't need any at all Nyla Rose. And we don't need any Marina Shafir. Please do something else. Please do something else. I don't care what you do. Just do something else. Now, the Jade Cargill stuff is actually interesting. Jade Cargill is already arguing with Stokely. Stokely Bivens? What the fuck is his name? Stokely Carmichael? That's not Carmichael. That's the name of the guy who started the Black Panthers. What is the name? Stokely Williams? Fuck, Jackson? I don't know what the fucking nigga name is. Anyway, Stokely brought in Layla Gray, as an interim baddie, because if the company can have an interim world champion, they can have an interim baddie. And so he says he's bringing her in and says that Jade needs to understand the type of top-notch finesse that it takes to get somebody from wanting to beat your ass to save your ass. I think he said he paid her $1,500 or something like that. So he talked about he paid her off. And Jade Cargill says, look, if this doesn't work, this is your ass. And I was like, she's already about to fire Stokely. They've been together like a month. She's already about to fire him. At least it's a storyline. You know, at least it's a storyline that matters. You know, Jade Cargill wanted another baddie. Stokely chose somebody that Jade Cargill already beat up, and she doesn't really approve. But she's going to trust Stokely's opinion on this, even though, you know, he ain't been there but a month. You know, he ain't been there long enough to have that kind of trust, but she's going to trust this guy. Layla Gray, perfectly fine, but she's just a body there, you know, because apparently they needed somebody. I don't know, you know, like whatever, you know, there was nothing special about Layla Gray that he liked or that he really trying to sell her on Jade Cargill. She was just a hired hand, you know, so that's weird. But I like this, you know. I like that there's tension between the two of them. That's what you need relationships for with characters. Characters need to interact with one another. Layla Gray, is she like a regular roster girl? Or is she just like a per diem kind of girl where she gets a check every time she shows up and nothing when she doesn't show up? I don't know how that works. But anyway, I'm guessing this isn't going to work out, and then she's going to get tired of Layla Gray and probably end up having to fire Stokely. And maybe she should have picked her own baddies, which seems to be the original idea. I don't understand why Jade Cargill is letting him pick the baddies anyway. Why is he the baddie picker? Why is he the guy that gets to pick the baddies anyway? But that's AEW Dynamite. This was a miserable show. This show felt like it was 3 hours long. Mainly because there were so many people I didn't care about on this show. Rush and Penta was fine. To me, it was, you know, the most enjoyable match on the show because it was these two guys that I liked in a match. You know, I could tell who the babyface was. I could tell who the heel was. I didn't really care about the story because there was not much of a story. But there was some storylines here that I cared about. Like I said, the Miro, Malachi Black storyline that they're about to start, I'm all in on that. But that's kind of it. You know, like that's like the one angle out of this whole show where I was like, yes, I'm down for this. You know, it says a lot that, you know, MJF and Danielson and Punk and all those guys vanished, and this show is now back to 2019 Dynamite. where I'm barely getting to the end of the show, you know, and we don't even got Kenny Omega to be okay in the middle of the show either, or, you know, so this is we're roughing it these days, boy. Talk about roughing it in a 6-man tag or something like that. We're roughing it right now, you know, but let me know what you guys think. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.